The Indian Army sets the record straight. Agnipath scheme will not be rolled back. Issues a warning to protesters. No place for vandals in the army. The concessions that have been announced in the last 5 days were not a response to protests and arson, but they were already in the works, the forces say. Amidst the protest by military aspirants over the Agnipath scheme, BJP leader Vijay Varghya says Agniveers can be hired as security guards at the BJP office. Party MP Priyanka Gandhi speaks up, says keep that offer to yourself. A Delhi-bound spice jet plane with 185 on board to Delhi catches fire after a bird hit, makes an emergency landing in Patna. All passengers safely evacuated without any injuries. The Assam floods worsen. The army is called in. 30 lakh people in 32 districts affected. And Prime Minister Modi launches the historic torch relay of the 44th Chess Olympiad, which comes to India for the first time after the FIDE takes it out of Russia. Chess legend Vishwanathan Anand predicts at least 2 medals for India. Hello and welcome to the news at 8 this Sunday evening. I'm Sarah Jacob. The big story at this hour. The Tri-Services chiefs came together to put up a strong defense of the government's new army recruitment scheme that has India on the boil. The Defense Tri-Services held a briefing aimed at clearing doubts about the new military recruitment scheme, Agnipath, and they tried to explain why India needs this policy for mass entry to the armed forces, namely that a large number of soldiers were in their 30s and this age factor has become worrisome, they say. Ruling out a rollback to the scheme, the army chiefs said that the concessions that have followed the announcement of the Agnipath scheme earlier this week were already in the works and were not a reaction to or a response to the outpouring of protests across India, and that those applying for the scheme now would have to give an undertaking that they're not part, or they were not part, of any violent protests or incidents of arson that have been witnessed in the past week. It was about an hour-long press conference. Here are the highlights.
देखिए हमें चाहिए क्या? यूथ. नो यूथ हम सबको मालूम है वो रिस्क ज्यादा लेता है, उसके अंदर जुनून ज्यादा है, जज्बा ज्यादा है. इस जुनून जज्बा को कैप्चर करना जरूरी है, बट ये जुनून जज्बे के साथ में हमें होश की भी जरूरत है. मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ होम अफेयर्स ने बोला कि हम रिजर्वेशन करेंगे. उन्होंने ये नहीं बोला कितनी परसेंटेज करेंगे, उन्होंने बोला प्रेफरेंस देंगे सीएपीएफ में. जैसे ही 3 दिन निकले और ये प्लान था, इसको ये मत सोचिएगा उन्होंने 4 जगह में देखी कुछ हरकतें होती हैं आर्सन की वजह से हुआ. नो, ये प्लान था. ये क्यों प्लान था? बिकॉज मालूम था कि ये 75% जो युवक हैं इतनी देर फौज 4 साल फौज के रहने के बाद ये देश में वापस जाएंगे. ये देश की ताकत है. इसका हम कर रहे क्या है? इसका ऐसा करा जा रहा है कि हर एक इंडिविजुअल जो हमारे साथ अग्निवीर स्कीम में जुड़ना चाहता है वो अपना सर्टिफिकेट देगा, प्लेज करेगा कि उसने ना तो किसी प्रोटेस्ट में हिस्सा लिया है, ना ही किसी तोड़फोड़ में हिस्सा लिया है. ये प्रावधान करा गया है. आप सबको मालूम है आजकल कहीं पे भी फोटो खींचेगी और वो आधार कार्ड के साथ जुड़ेगी. पुलिस वेरिफिकेशन इज 100%. कोई नहीं आ सकता फौज में विदाउट पुलिस वेरिफिकेशन. कमिंग टू रोल बैक ऑफ द स्कीम, नो. And why should it be rolled back? It is the only progressive step to make the country young. Why is it being made young? You know, we are tinkering with देश की रक्षा. There is no space. एक ही सिर्फ है देश की रक्षा करने के लिए, और देश की रक्षा करने के लिए मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूं. पता है कितनी कैजुअलिटीज आती हैं जस्ट फॉर हेल्थ पर्पसेस फ्रॉम हाई एल्टीट्यूड एरियाज? आप पढ़िएगा, ओके, तो तब आपको पता चलेगा यंग क्यों जरूरी है, ओके, एंड क्या जरूरत है उसकी. तो ये रोल बैक करने की तो मेरे तरफ से तो आपको कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि बिल्कुल रोल बैक नहीं हो.
And in the midst of all of this, the BJP National General Secretary Kailash Vijay Varghya today claimed that Agniveers could get preference to be hired as security guards at the BJP office. Ironically, he was speaking in a bid to address concerns of Agnipath protesters over job security. And Mr. Vijay Varghya told reporters that young men who have completed the 4-year tour of duty under this new scheme will get first preference for security guard jobs at the BJP office. Listen in.
सेना की ट्रेनिंग में पहला डिसिप्लिन, दूसरा आज्ञा का पालन करना। जब वो ट्रेनिंग लेगा और 4 साल की सेवा करने के बाद निकलेगा, 17.5 साल से 23 साल तक की उम्र। यदि वो 21 साल में भी भर्ती होता है, 4 साल काम करता है तो 25 साल। 25 साल में जब वो बाहर निकलेगा तो उसको 11 लाख रुपए उसके हाथ में होंगे और अग्निवीर का एक छाती पर तगमा लगा के घूमेगा। मुझे अगर इस ऑफिस में, बीजेपी के ऑफिस में सिक्योरिटी रखना है तो मैं अग्निवीर को प्राथमिकता दूंगा।
And of course, there have been reactions to this. The Aam Aadmi Party's Arvind Kejriwal says, do not disrespect the youth and army personnel of the country so much. They work hard day and night to pass the physical exam and the test because they want to serve the country for their whole life by going to the army, not because they want to be a guard outside the BJP office. The Congress's Dipinder Hooda says, is the pride of being an Indian soldier now at par with being a chowkidar at the BJP office? And not just that, Varun Gandhi of the BJP, his own party colleague, has reacted to Mr. Vijay Varghya's statement, saying there aren't enough words to describe the valor of the armed forces. The offer of being a security guard at the party office is a slight to their efforts. And amidst these protests against the Agnipath, the centre's new scheme for military recruitments, the Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi Vadra has said that the new plan will finish the army. Addressing a Congress Satyagraha on the issue, she urged the protesters to continue their agitation, but peacefully. Congress MPs and leaders staged a protest at Delhi's Jantar Mantar to protest against the scheme.
की सेना जो हमारी देश की सुरक्षा करती है, जिनके सारे तमाम जो यहाँ पे भी आप खड़े हैं, आप सरहद पर जाकर सुरक्षा करते हैं, ऐसी स्कीम है जो इस सेना को खत्म कर देगा। आप इस सरकार को पहचानिए, इस सरकार की नीयत को पहचानिए मेरे भाइयों, मेरी बहनों। लोकतांत्रिक तरह से शांतिपूर्वक, अहिंसा, सत्य के मार्ग पर चल के इस सरकार को खत्म कीजिए। इसीलिए इस मंच पर खड़े हुए मैं आपसे आग्रह करती हूं कि जो भी आप प्रदर्शन करें, आप शांतिपूर्वक करें, लेकिन आप रुके नहीं, आप थके नहीं। ये आपके अधिकार है, आपका देश है।
मैं आज कांग्रेस से, मैं आज सोनिया जी से, राहुल जी से, प्रियंका जी से पूछना चाहता हूं, प्रियंका जी, जब आपको आग्रह करना चाहिए था कि जो सेना के लिए रिफॉर्म आवश्यक है वो रिफॉर्म हम कब करेंगे, आपने तब आग्रह नहीं किया। आज आप सत्याग्रह कर रही हैं। इनका एक नेता राजस्थान में कह रहा है वो नक्सली बन जाएंगे। राहुल जी, प्रियंका जी, देश के युवकों पे आपको इतना भी भरोसा नहीं है? इफ दे आर ट्रेन टू बी कॉम्बैट फाइटर्स, इफ दे आर ट्रेन टू बी इन द आर्मी, दे विल टर्न नक्सल्स। आप इस देश के युवाओं के प्रति इस प्रकार की भावना रखते हैं?
And while we've been inundated with images of angry mobs setting trains on fire and damaging public property, there have been peaceful protests against this new recruitment scheme, which limits the service of new recruits to 4 years too. At one such peaceful demonstration in Haryana's Panipat, an interaction between protesters and a government official overseeing the agitation turned emotional.
देख, मैं तेरी बात समझ गया, सेंटीमेंट्स आ गए बेटा, तू मुझे लिख के दे। मैं बेटा मुझे बोलने तो दे, तू मुझे लिख के दे, मैं तेरी बात सरकार तक पहुंचाऊंगा। अपना कैरियर खराब मत कर मेरे बेटे, लोगों की बात में यहाँ पता क्या बेटे को परेशान कर देगा कैरियर खराब। बेटे मैं तेरे बाप के बराबर हूँ, तेरा कैरियर खराब हो जाएगा, तेरी बात पहुंच गई। बेटा मैं आप सरकार आराम से बात लिखो, मेरे को दे दो, मैं रिसीव करूंगा और पहुंचा दूंगा। ठीक है ना, इसमें घबराने वाली कोई बात नहीं है। तुमने कानून का पालन किया, अपना प्रदर्शन कर लिया, तुम्हारी बात सरकार तक पहुंच रही है, इसमें परेशानी क्या है? आप अपना लेकर में मुझे दो, मैं सरकार तक पहुंचाऊंगा आपकी बात.
Let's get to the other big story of the day that we must focus on. The flood situation in the northeast looks grim, with Assam and Meghalaya emerging as the worst hit. At least 42 people have died. Nearly 40 lakh have been affected in both the states. Nearly 31 lakh people have been affected, out of which 1.5 lakh are taking shelter now in 514 relief camps. The army has been called in for rescue and relief operations. The Prime Minister spoke with the Chief Minister, Himanta Biswa Sarma, and assured him of all possible help from the central government for this disaster-hit state. And NDTV Sanjay Chakravarti and Ratandeep Chaudhary bring us his ground report as they travelled with an army unit during a rescue operation.
Well, this is perhaps one of the biggest floods that Assam has seen in the past decade. In fact, we are coming to you from Kamalpur, which is in Kamrup district. Now, Kamalpur Revenue Circle in Kamrup is one of the most affected area in Kamrup district, and people here behind me are all flood victims. They have gathered here on the National Highway 31. A part of the National Highway 31 has been actually blocked to allow these people to take shelter. At this moment, they are being distributed with relief material. You can see here district administration making sure that people, the flood victims, get the rations now. This is a key national highway that actually links Lower Assam to Guwahati. In fact, this actually goes towards the Bengal border and links the region to northeast. Now, you can imagine that people are so desperate that they're coming and staying in whatever high grounds they're getting. National highways, by the side of the railway tracks. And for the state government, the focus is on rescue as well as relief. Both of these two operations, the state government is trying to run the operations in tandem. However, what we saw over the past 1 week is that incessant rainfall, unprecedented rainfall that had resulted in many of the rivers actually bursting their embankments, breaching embankments, and thus new areas are getting inundated. Earlier in the day, we were in a rescue operation with Indian Army, and we saw the kind of deluge that has been caused, the kind of infrastructure loss that the rural areas have also seen. Also, what is very important here is that even last night there was very heavy rainfall, and therefore in urban areas like Guwahati, we saw waterlogging in the morning. There was fresh landslides. Now in Barak Valley region, which is in southern Assam, the Barak river is flowing above danger level, and therefore there is massive floods happening in the districts of Kachar and Karimganj. Now these areas are already cut off from the rest of the state, because the National Highway 6, which is in Meghalaya, where we played out that soundbite of Meghalaya Chief Minister who was there at ground zero. So National Highway has caved in. So southern Assam, Tripura and Mizoram is completely cut off by road and also by rain. Remember, in the previous first wave of floods, there was massive damage to the rail infrastructure, and after that, that area, the rail connectivity has snapped. So it is more than the deluge, the type of infrastructure damage, the type of, miseries that the floods have brought to the life of the people is something very unprecedented. And people here say that after 2004, this is the biggest flood that they have seen.